Pan-seared meat, fish, and poultry, like this chicken breast, are quick and easy, but they always need a little dressing up. There are a lot of pre-made options, but there's also a great technique that opens up a huge array of flavors. So skip the bottled sauces. All you need is your pan. A pan sauce is just the sauce you make in the pan that you seared your meat or fish in. It gets some of its flavor from the fond. Those are the brown bits that are left in the pan. The really nice thing about using the fond is it ties the flavors of the sauce to the protein it'll be served with. Pan sauces are my go-to when I don't have much time, but want to add big flavor, a polished look, and a little bit of texture to whatever protein I'm serving. They're typically made with minced aromatics, a flavorful liquid or two, some stock, and they're finished with butter, which brings richness, rounds out their flavor, and thickens their consistency. Best of all, they're fast. You can't start your pan sauce until your protein comes out of the pan, and they're designed to come together while your protein is resting. Once you understand the method, it's really easy to vary the flavor by changing up the ingredients. Let's take a look at one of my favorite pan sauces. I'm making a vinegar pepper pan sauce developed by Andrew Janjigian to go with his crispy skin chicken breasts. Now, I have those chicken breasts right here. They are skin on, but they're boneless, and chicken breasts don't really come this way, so there's a little bit of prep work to do. You're gonna wanna start with split chicken breasts, and you'll place them on the cutting board skin side down. That exposes the rib cage and bones that need to be removed. Using the tip of a sharp knife, you're gonna wanna gently cut to release the bones from the breast. And while you're doing this, you'll gently lift those bones up while keeping the tip of your knife as close to the rib cage as possible. After you've peeled those bones back and released the breast, there's the rest of the wishbone that you have to find. Once you've found it, make 2 small incisions on either side. Once you've released the wishbone, you can pull all of that junk off, and what you're left with is your chicken breast. Next up, you're gonna find the chicken tender. It's the little bit of muscle that just lifts off, and you might need to use your knife to release it. After removing the tender, cover the chicken breasts with plastic wrap, pound it flat, poke some holes, and we're ready to cook. So this chicken starts in a cold pan. I'm just gonna get some oil in here. It's about 2 tablespoons. Swirl it around. They'll go in the skillet, skin side down. I'll pop a heavy weight on top and set this burner to medium. These chicken breasts are going to cook for 7 to 9 minutes. Now I'll remove this pot and let them keep cooking for another 6 to 8 minutes. Almost done. I'll just flip these over and let them go until they hit 160 degrees, which takes 2 to 3 minutes. I'll get these out of the pan and resting on a plate, and let's move on to our sauce. Even though I'm working with chicken here, you're not limited to chicken. You can make a pan sauce with anything that leaves a fond in your skillet. I'm thinking a ribeye, maybe some scallops, pork chops, whatever you got. The first thing we want to do is to build on the roasty flavors of the fond. You can see there's a couple tablespoons of fat in this pan, and while fat brings flavor, I know I'm adding butter later. So I'm just going to keep 2 teaspoons of this fat. Next up, minced shallot. Now you could use other aromatics here, garlic or onion. Whatever you use, you want to make sure it's minced. The pieces need to be finely cut so that they'll cook through quickly. Whatever you're using, you want to cook until tender. This isn't a place where you want crunchy, half-cooked aromatics. Now that the shallots are tender, it's time for our trick. I've got a teaspoon of all-purpose flour here, and I'm just going to sprinkle that in and cook, stirring to make sure there are no clumps. In effect, we're making a small amount of gravy. The fat separates all of our flour particles, so when we add our liquid, it won't form any lumps. As the flour cooks, its starch granules, think of them as balloons filled with starch molecules, break open. And those freed molecules, they're really good at binding water. That's what thickens our sauce. A visual indicator of too much cooking is browning of the flour. You'll notice that when you add the flour to the pan, it'll pick up a little bit of color from the fond. As long as it stays that color and doesn't darken, you're good to go. Once that flour is cooked, we can add our liquids. In this case, I've got chicken broth and pickled pepper brine. So the fond is dissolving in that liquid, and I just want to help it out by scraping the pan. The nice thing about using pickle brine is its flavor is really concentrated. That means it doesn't need reduction, and I can add it at the same time as the chicken broth. Now that this has come to a simmer, I'm just gonna let this cook for 2 to 3 minutes, and that'll give the flour a chance to thicken the sauce. This trick is great for 2 reasons. Flour thickened sauces don't break because they're thickened with flour and not fat. And because you're using flour, if you wanted to use less fat, you could. This looks great. I've got a scant half cup of sauce, so I'll shut off the heat. To this, I'm going to add any juices that came off of our resting chicken. And now I'm going to whisk in chopped cherry peppers, minced thyme, and a tablespoon of butter. The thing to keep in mind here is you want the butter nice and cold. That way it doesn't melt when it gets into that pan, and you have time to emulsify the fat into the sauce. Now that that butter's worked in, we're done, and it's time to eat. Now, because I spent so much time making sure that skin is crispy, I'm not going to drizzle this sauce on the skin. I'm actually going to go around the chicken breast. This looks and smells so good. That's crispy. I can hear it. This sauce is so great. It's punchy, it's bright, it's vibrant. There's just a little bit of richness from that butter. And underneath all of that pickly punch is this beautiful savory chicken flavor that we got from our fond. The other thing I love about this sauce is its consistency. It's got this beautiful viscosity and cling, and so it's gonna flavor every bite, and it gets that from the flour. Of course, you don't have to use pickle brine if you're making this style of sauce. Because it's thickened with flour, you want something kind of punchy that'll like kick through the starch. I think a vinegar or lemon juice would also be great in this application. This method I just demoed is the easy version of a pan sauce, but because of the flour, it requires a punchy liquid. If you're looking for something more adaptable, what you want is a traditional pan sauce. I'm making Cook's Illustrated's red wine pan sauce, but you could use other liquids, white wine, brandy, beer, even fruit juice. Just like before, I've got a fond in the pan and I've poured off a good amount of that fat. This is ready for our shallots. Just like before, I'm gonna cook these down until they're nice and tender. This time, we're skipping the flour and going right in with the wine. Just as the pickle brine did, this wine is gonna help pull the fond off of the bottom of the skillet. Unlike that brine though, this wine needs to cook down and concentrate. I'm gonna let it go until it gets kind of syrupy. A good sign that your wine is properly reduced is you should be able to pull your spatula through the pan and it'll leave a trail. Also, the fact that you're getting a lot of tiny bubbles that are forming almost a foamy look, that kind of means you're ready to move on. This looks appropriately reduced. I'm gonna add a little bit of sugar for sweetness and our broth. I like brown sugar because it's got a molassesy note that brings a little bit more complexity to the sauce. I'll turn this up to let it come to a boil and let it come down just for a tiny bit. This looks great. I'm gonna ditch this spatula, shut off the heat. It's time for the butter. Now, again, I have chilled butter just like before because I want it to melt slowly so that I have time to whisk that fat into the sauce. Since I'm not using any flour, I'm gonna need more butter to get that rich, thick consistency that I got before. So what all of that whisking is accomplishing is it's breaking the butter fat into tiny droplets and suspending it in the wine that's in this pan. That makes the sauce not eat greasy. It also thickens the consistency. But because we're using butter as our thickener and not flour, we need to use 3 times as much butter as we did before. Now with a butter thickened sauce, there is the possibility that it breaks. And what that means is the fat separates out and it kind of pools on top. The sauce will look super shiny and kind of greasy, and it'll eat that way too. But if that happens to you, don't worry about it. You can fix it. All you need is a 1/4 cup of water. Add the water to your broken sauce, bring it up to a simmer, and that bubbling action will re-emulsify the fat into the liquid. This sauce, though, is not broken. In fact, it looks pretty great and needs just a few finishing touches. I've got some minced rosemary, touch of vinegar, balsamic vinegar, and I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of pepper. All right, this looks great. Let's go sauce a steak. It's a good sauce. It's got a hint of beefiness underneath all that wine. It's got the same cling as the starch-based sauce, but it's a little bit silkier because it's getting all of its texture from that butter. I gotta go back for one more bite. So what's our takeaway? Don't throw out your fond. Instead, take a couple of minutes and a couple of pantry ingredients to turn it into a vibrant sauce that makes the most of whatever it is you've just seared. What are your tricks for pan sauces? Do you have any go-to ingredients? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check out more great recipes at cooksillustrated.com.